For this video, I'm looking at the idea of drawing a figure in 8 or 9 heads and how a head size and length determines how the rest of the template is drawn. So in order to do this, I have printed out a picture of a swimsuit model because it's really useful to be able to see all of the different points of reference on the body, and I'm going to look at making a template from studying this particular printout. So because we're going to base it from the head, I'm first of all going to define the points on the head that are of use, and then I'm going to draw the lines of how many times I can divide the head into the body. Normally the head divides in 8 or 9 times. On a very tall person like a model like this. I'm working on a light box and I've got a sheet of quite see-through paper. I'm going to define the height of the head, and then I'm going to see how many times that intersects through the body and exactly where it cuts through the figure. So I think that the top of the head is about here. Actually, to make this easier, I'm going to draw a line down through the center of the body, and using that line then I can make clearer lines across. Okay, so that is the top of the head and this is the bottom of the head. So if I take a measurement, the measurement is pretty much 3. It's 3.1, but if I even it out at 3. So now I'm going to divide that up through the body. So I will have one section here. Okay, so I'm marking across on each of those marks. I'm now going to number how many heads I have ended up with. So the head is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, and number 8 is taking us to just above the ankle here, and then number 9 is really just above the ankle to the foot area. So we could describe this model as having 9 heads. For 9 heads, what we're really looking for is the shape and size of the head will determine exactly where all of the other points occur. So it's important to note where number 2 ends really defines the top of the bust. And I think about halfway down here, or just a little bit lower than halfway between 2 and 3 is where the lower bust is coming in. So center bust is coming in at about this point here. So really that's about a third roughly. So I think probably under bust is coming in here about halfway down. So I'm going to make a mark here for halfway between the two. And that's going to be my indication for under bust. I will define that with a broken line. And write in here under bust. Okay, so upper bust, lower bust or under bust, and center bust. So then the end of box number 3 is coming in just above the natural waist. So the natural waist is the slimmest part before the body starts to come back out again. So again, we're looking at roughly a third below this line is the natural waist. So I'm going to draw a dotted line in here. And then we're coming down to the point here at the end of number 4. So we haven't had the crotch area yet. But again, looking specifically at this point, it's halfway between number 4 and number 5. So drawing a line across there. Marking that in as crotch. And then the end of number 6 is pretty much the top of the knee. So it's the beginning of the knee. So again, we're looking about roughly a third below is where sort of that lower knee section is, and most often the knee is defined by that section, which we would know as the lower knee. So again, it's about a third below here, and then at the end of number 8 is the ankles. So before I move the sheet of paper away that I've just drawn all of the lines onto, I'm going to define the width of the head, and then I can use that as a reference point for the body as I move down along. So the side of the face is here. The jawline is coming down at an angle, and then the chin is reasonably straight across down at the bottom. And again, I'm imagining now with the top of the head, we're roughly in this case here, and that will be a little bit rounder as it comes down to where the rest of the face is here. And then you can just about see the ears. So the ears tend to start roughly around mid eyebrow eye area and coming down then to roughly the base of the nose. So I find that handy to have a reference point. And again, when you're looking, if the top of the head is here and the bottom of the head is here, as a rough guide, the eyes are roughly halfway down along the length of the head. And when you've marked the eyes in roughly halfway between the eyes and the chin is the nose, and roughly halfway between the nose and the chin is the mouth. Okay, and that gives you a very rough estimate of where the facial features are going to lie. Think of the body in sections. So the head is one section, the neck is the next section. I always like to think of the torso as being the rib cage underneath, because the rib cage doesn't move, so that is a solid, sort of unbendy or unpliable section of the body. The waist is a soft part, so that's a part that can move. And then we have the hips. So again, the hips are a solid bony part of the body. They don't move. And again, the legs, a little bit like a doll, will be able to move out and in from the point where they join onto the hips. But again, this part itself doesn't move. And then from the knee, again, they move, and from the ankle down. So I've just traced off the head, and we had previously determined this head is 3 centimeters long. I've just taken a measurement, not including the ears, and this is measuring 2 centimeters across. So I have a 2 centimeter measurement from here to here, and that will be useful as I try to gauge how wide the torso of the body will be when I go to sketch it. So the neck is coming down narrower than the width of the face, so coming in a little bit here and in a little bit here, and then I find it useful to sketch in the torso without the arms. So I would normally like to come to about here, and then I'm coming down towards the waist shape. But I like to think of the rib cage here as not including the soft bit. So if I'm looking at where the bones of the ribs come down to about here, and then there's a softer piece in the tummy where the torso can bend from side to side. So if I just think of this rib cage as coming to here, and then I have the softer tummy bit, and then for me, I always like to think of having underwear on the model. It makes it easier to draw. So again, we're coming down here to the crotch area, and then noting also up at the top with the arms, the elbow here hits the narrow waist part of the drawing. So if the narrow waist is here, we have the elbow here. So roughly half the length of the arm will come from the shoulder to the elbow, and the rest of the arm then will come down to where the hand is. And again, the wrist is coming in pretty much at the same height as the crotch. So really looking at the body and studying where all of the sections connect and interconnect is very important. So I've drawn a white line in here where the natural waist would be. I've drawn a line here where the elbows would be. And again, elbow and waist are pretty much on the same point. Crotch area and the wrist pretty much on the same point, and the hand will be drawn down from there. And when you're looking at the legs, we tend to look at the length of the leg from here to here is roughly the same length as from here to here, and the feet then will be drawn depending on whatever shoes the model is wearing. Okay, so looking now at the legs, and I normally find it easiest to work to where the bottom of the knee is here. So the top of the knee is here. These can be thought of sometimes as the flatter area. Sometimes people draw the knee as two lines here, representing the side of the knee. So again, from the hip area, the leg comes out and then comes in. And then the same story here, out and in, although you can see it's quite a bit flatter on the inside than it is on the outside. And then noting where the calf goes, the muscle bunches out a lot more here than it does on the inside, and it tends to curve in more on the inside of the calf here. So it's important when drawing that calf to bunch out on the outside of the upper part, the top half of the calf, and then it is slimmer on the inside, and particularly down here on the bottom and just in underneath the knee here as well. And then I normally like to think of that as a section, and then the foot will be drawn on afterwards depending on what the model is wearing. So for a flat foot, the foot will come out literally as it's drawn there. But if this model was wearing high-heeled shoes, that foot would extend more as a point. Again, with the arms, the widest part of the arm tends to be the forearm here. Now, it's probably a little bit difficult to see in this particular photograph, but this section of the arm here is the widest section. That's coming reasonably narrow here. And again, when you look at the shape, so we round off for the shoulder, there's normally a little bunch here for a muscle, and it then comes back in. And then this bone section here tends to come out quite a bit before coming back down for the wrist. And again, the most defining line in this area is this little line here on the inside of the elbow. So with the top of the arm coming around the shoulder, bunching out a little bit there for the arm muscles, and then back in. And then this section comes out quite a bit before coming back down to the wrist area here. And then we tend to think of the hand as coming in three sections. So you've got to the knuckles is here, to the mid finger joints is here, and then the lower finger joints are there, and then we have that thumb ready to go in there as well. So to think of it as three sections, it's solid to here, it then bends to here and bends to here, and all of these sections can move independently of each other as well. Okay, so that is essentially the figure. And if you were to do this and trace off from a real person or a real model maybe 2 or 3 times, and then look at maybe sketching the same figure again without using the template or the photograph in underneath. And once you've drawn these lines a few times, it's like your hand will remember the length of the movements to get to where the wrist is, to get to where the elbow is. And then to consider in terms of the head, when you've drawn the head in, how far do you need to draw down to get to the under bust or the waist area? How far do you need to draw down to get to the crotch area here? And then how far to the knee, how far to the ankle, and then you can add the feet in afterwards.